James Clear begins the book not with theory, but with a story from his own life. This story is important because it shows why he truly believes in the power of small, consistent changes. As a teenager in high school, James was an ambitious baseball player. He dreamed of becoming great in the sport. But during his sophomore year, his life changed in a single moment. While at practice, a baseball bat slipped from a player's hands and struck James directly on the head. The accident was severe. His nose broke, his skull cracked, and the blow was so powerful that it pushed fragments of bone into his brain. He lost consciousness instantly. The following months were a nightmare. James had to be airlifted to the hospital. Doctors performed emergency treatment. For a while, his life hung between survival and death. Even after he regained consciousness, the recovery was slow. His body was weak, and his memory and coordination were badly affected. Everyday tasks that most people take for granted, like walking to class, focusing on studies, or even breathing properly at night, became huge struggles for him. In that painful period, James realized something important. There was no magical overnight cure. He could not just bounce back. Instead, his only path forward was a series of tiny improvements, made one step at a time. He could not change everything at once, but he could do small actions each day that slowly rebuilt his life. He started with simple physical therapy exercises. Then, he worked on his concentration and discipline in studies. He began focusing on sleep, fitness, and healthy routines. Each change felt small and almost invisible, but together they began to compound. Months later, he was healthier. A few years later, he became an academic All-American baseball player. Eventually, he graduated as one of the top students in his class. Looking back, James realized something powerful. His recovery, his success, and even his career as a writer all came from the accumulation of small atomic habits. He explains that habits are like the hidden architecture of our daily lives. They decide whether we rise or fall, succeed or fail. We often think that massive success requires massive action, but the truth is the opposite. Real change comes from thousands of small decisions and actions, repeated consistently over time. He gives a powerful analogy. Imagine an ice cube sitting on a table in a cold room. The temperature is 25 degrees, and nothing happens. Slowly the room warms. 26 degrees, 27 degrees, 28 degrees. Still, the ice cube does not melt. At 31 degrees, nothing changes. But at 32 degrees, the ice begins to melt. Was it the final 1-degree shift that caused the transformation? No, it was the small, invisible buildup of all the degrees before it. Habits work exactly like this. You may not see results immediately, but the effort compounds until a breakthrough happens. James also introduces another key idea. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Goals are good for direction, but it is systems, your daily habits, that decide progress. If you want better results, stop focusing only on goals and start focusing on the habits that build those results. He tells us that this book will not be about motivation speeches or unrealistic promises. Instead, it is about practical methods for building good habits and breaking bad ones. He has organized the book around a framework he calls the 4 laws of behavior change. These are simple, actionable rules. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. The introduction closes with an invitation. James tells the reader, no matter how broken or stuck you feel today, improvement is possible. Just as he rebuilt his life from near tragedy, anyone can change their direction by focusing on small daily habits. The power of tiny gains will transform your health, your career. Chapter 1. The Surprising Power of Atomic Habits. James Clear begins this chapter with a simple truth. Small habits make a big difference. Most people overestimate the importance of one big decision and underestimate the value of tiny daily actions. We tend to think success requires dramatic breakthroughs, but in reality, it is built on the quiet accumulation of little choices. He compares habits to compound interest. Just as money multiplies when it is invested over time, the effects of your habits also multiply as you repeat them. Improving by just 1% every day may not even be noticeable in the beginning, but after 1 year, it makes you 37 times better. On the other hand, if you decline by 1% daily, the results compound negatively, leading to failure. James gives another clear example. Think of an airplane leaving Los Angeles and heading for New York. If the pilot changes the direction of the nose of the plane by just a few degrees south, the plane will not land in New York at all. It will end up in Washington, D.C. This shows how small shifts in daily choices can change your entire life destination. The frustrating part about habits is that the results are often delayed. You may go to the gym for weeks and see no visible change. You may start saving money, but not feel wealthy. You may practice a skill, but still seem average. This period is what James calls the plateau of latent potential. Progress is happening beneath the surface, but it takes time before results become visible. The mistake most people make is quitting too early, before the ice cube finally melts at 32 degrees. This is why habits are so powerful. They do not deliver instant transformation, but they are the compound interest of self-improvement. Just as you cannot see the slow erosion of a rock by water until years have passed, you cannot always see the silent power of habits until much later. James warns us not to focus only on goals. Goals are about the results we want. Habits are about the systems that create those results. A goal of losing weight means nothing without the daily habit of healthy eating and exercise. A goal of writing a book means nothing without the habit of writing consistently. Success is not about a single achievement. It is about the lifestyle and system that produce continuous growth. He summarizes the lesson of this chapter with one line. Habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. If you want to predict where your life will end up, look not at your goals, but at your habits. Now that James has explained the surprising power of atomic habits, the natural question arises: what shapes these habits in the first place? Why do some habits stick while others fade? This leads us into Chapter 2. How your habits shape your identity and vice versa. In this next part, James argues that habits are not just actions. They are deeply connected to who we believe we are. Our identity drives our habits, and our habits in turn reinforce our identity. To truly change, we must shift not only what we do, but also who we believe we are becoming. Chapter 2. How your habits shape your identity and vice versa. James Clear now takes us deeper. In the previous part, he explained that habits are powerful because of their compounding effect. But here he makes an even stronger point. Habits are not just about what you want to achieve, they are about who you become. Most of us focus on outcomes. We say, I want to lose 10 kilos. I want to save $1,000. I want to run a marathon. But goals like these are only the outer layer of change. James describes 3 layers of behavior change. The first layer is about outcomes. These are the results you want to see, such as a healthier body or more wealth. The second layer is about processes. These are the routines and systems that create results, such as going to the gym, budgeting, or writing daily. The deepest layer is identity. This is what you believe about yourself, your self-image. Real change happens when we start from the inside out, from identity. Instead of saying, I want to run a marathon, say, I am a runner. Instead of saying, I want to quit smoking, say, I am not a smoker. When you tie habits to your identity, they become more permanent. James gives an example. Imagine 2 people offered a cigarette. The first person says, no thanks, I am trying to quit. The second says, no thanks, I don't smoke. Both are refusing, but the difference is huge. The first still sees himself as a smoker who is struggling. The second has shifted identity. He does not identify with smoking anymore. Every small action you take is a vote for the type of person you are becoming. When you practice playing guitar, you cast a vote for being a musician. When you show up to the gym, you cast a vote for being an athlete. No single action changes your identity completely, but together, repeated actions build a strong sense of self. Of course, identity can work against us too. If you believe I am always lazy or I am terrible with money, your habits will follow that belief. This is why change is difficult. Our old identity holds us back. The solution is to prove a new identity to ourselves with small wins. If you want to be a writer, write 1 sentence today. If you want to be healthy, take 1 walk today. Each tiny action is evidence for the new identity you want to build. James emphasizes that the most effective way to change habits is not to focus on what you want to achieve, but on who you wish to become. True behavior change is identity change. Once your identity shifts, habits follow naturally. At this point, James has shown us why identity is the foundation of habits, but we still need to understand the mechanics. How exactly do habits form? What are the steps behind this invisible process? This question leads directly into the next part. Chapter 3: How to Build Better Habits in 4 Simple Steps. In that chapter, James will explain the habit loop: cue, craving, response, and reward, and show how we can use this loop to design habits that stick. Chapter 3: How to Build Better Habits in 4 Simple Steps. Now that James has explained the power of habits and their connection to identity, he turns to the actual process of how habits are formed. He tells us that every habit, whether good or bad, follows the same pattern. This pattern is a feedback loop that has 4 parts: cue, craving, response, reward. Cue is the trigger. It is what starts the habit. For example, you walk into the kitchen and see a plate of cookies. That sight acts as the cue. Craving is the desire. It is your brain's motivation to change your state. In the case of the cookies, you crave the sweet taste and the burst of energy. Response is the actual action. You reach out, take the cookie, and eat it. Reward is the satisfaction. Your craving is fulfilled, and your brain registers that this action was useful. The cycle becomes stronger because your mind remembers that next time you see cookies, eating them will feel good. James makes it clear that these 4 steps are present in every habit. If a behavior is not obvious, you will not notice it. If it is not attractive, you will not want it. If it is not easy, you will not do it. If it is not satisfying, you will not repeat it. This is the habit loop that explains why we keep doing some things and avoid others. This understanding gives us power. If we want to build better habits, we must design them using these 4 steps. James calls this the 4 laws of behavior change. Make it obvious. Make it attractive. Make it easy. Make it satisfying. These 4 laws will form the main structure of the book. Each law is a principle that can be applied in everyday life. Together, they give us a simple and practical method for creating habits that last and breaking habits that destroy us. Now that we know the habit loop, the next question is, how do we apply it? How do we make a habit so clear and visible that we cannot ignore it? That is the first law. Make it obvious. This brings us to the next section of the book. The first law begins with a powerful story. It shows us that simply noticing the right cues can save a life, and that the first step to habit change is learning to see clearly. Chapter 4: The Man Who Did Not Look Right. James Clear begins this chapter with a story from a hospital. A nurse was attending to a patient who seemed fine at first, but the nurse noticed something small. The patient's skin looked a little pale. His breathing seemed slightly unusual. The details were subtle, but the nurse felt something was not right. She called a doctor immediately. Soon, it was clear the patient was having a serious medical problem. The nurse's quick recognition saved his life. What is amazing here is that the nurse could not explain exactly how she knew. It was her habit of noticing patterns that made her react in time. This story teaches an important lesson. Our brains are always scanning for cues. When a habit is strong, the cue becomes so obvious to us that we do not even think about it. We just act. The nurse had repeated her work so many times that she could see a danger sign before others. This is the power of cues. James explained that if we want to build a new habit, the first step is to make the cue clear. If the cue is invisible, the habit will never start. For example, if you want to drink more water, keep a bottle on your desk. If you want to exercise, place your workout clothes where you can see them. The habit must begin with visibility. On the other hand, if you want to stop a bad habit, Make the cue invisible. If you do not want to eat junk food, do not buy it. If you want to watch less television, hide the remote. What you do not see, you are less likely to do. James introduces a method called the habit scorecard. In this method, you write down your daily habits and mark whether they are good, bad, or neutral. For example, waking up, brushing your teeth, checking your phone, drinking coffee. When you see them clearly on paper, you become aware of the cues that are shaping your life. Awareness is the foundation of change. Many times, we act on habits without even noticing. But once you write them down, you begin to see patterns. Only when you can see them can you take control. This chapter ends with a simple truth. If you want to change your habits, you must first notice them. What is invisible cannot be improved. Make the cues obvious, and you will be ready to take the first real step in habit change. Now that James has shown us the power of noticing cues, the next question arises. How do we actually use these cues to start new habits in daily life? How do we ensure that we follow through and not just hope for change? This leads us directly to the next part. Chapter 5. The best way to start a new habit. Here, James will introduce practical strategies like implementation intentions and habit stacking, which make it easier to begin and maintain good habits. Chapter 5. The best way to start a new habit. James Clear explains that many people fail at habits not because they lack motivation, but because they lack clarity. We often say things like, "I will exercise more," or "I will eat healthier." But these are vague promises. The brain cannot act well on vague instructions. We need a clear plan. The best way to start a habit is through what James calls implementation intention. It is a simple formula. I will do this behavior at this time in this place. For example, I will meditate for 2 minutes at 7 in the morning in my living room. Or, I will walk for 10 minutes during my lunch break at the park. By writing down the exact time and location, we make the habit concrete. Research shows that people who use this method are far more likely to stick to their habits. James also introduces another method called habit stacking. This means attaching a new habit to an existing one. For example, after I brush my teeth, I will floss. After I pour my morning coffee, I will write one sentence in my journal. By connecting a new habit to something you already do every day, you use the old cue to trigger the new behavior. It is like piggybacking on a routine that is already automatic. The beauty of habit stacking is that it makes change easier. You do not have to create a new time slot or remember a new schedule. You simply attach the new behavior to something already present in your daily life. James reminds us that clarity creates success. If you are not specific, you will fall into the trap of saying things like someday or later. Someday never comes. Later usually means never. But when you say exactly what, where, and when, you give your brain a clear signal. He also points out that this works in the opposite direction too. If you want to break a bad habit, make it unclear. Do not decide a specific time or place for it. Remove the structure around it. Without a cue, the habit will lose strength. The key message of this chapter is simple. To begin a new habit, do not rely on motivation. Rely on planning. Implementation intentions and habit stacking make habits obvious, specific, and actionable. Now that James has shown us how to make a habit clear and specific, the next step is to understand the role of environment. Because even the best plan will fail if your surroundings are working against you. This leads us directly into the next part. Chapter 6. Motivation is overrated. Environment often matters more. Here, James will explain why your environment shapes your behavior more than willpower, and how you can design your surroundings to support good habits. Chapter 6. Motivation is overrated. Environment often matters more. James Clear begins by challenging a common belief. Most people think they need more motivation to change their lives. We admire people who seem disciplined and full of willpower. But in reality, motivation is often unreliable. It rises and falls. It cannot be trusted for long-term success. Instead, James says, environment plays a much bigger role. Your surroundings shape your behavior more than your inner drive. For example, if you walk into a kitchen and see cookies on the counter, you are likely to eat them. Not because you lack willpower, but because the cue is right in front of you. On the other hand, if fruit is visible and cookies are hidden, you will probably eat the fruit. The choice feels natural because the environment nudges you in that direction. This is why designing your environment is more powerful than trying to stay motivated. Make good habits easy to see and bad habits invisible. If you want to read more, place books on your pillow so you see them before sleep. If you want to practice guitar, keep it in the middle of your living room instead of locked in a closet. If you want to stop wasting time on social media, keep your phone in another room while working. James uses a strong line here. Environment is the invisible hand that shapes human behavior. We do not always notice it, but it controls our actions every day. He also explains that we often associate certain environments with certain habits. For example, you may always eat snacks while watching television. Over time, your brain links the living room couch with eating. If you want to break that habit, change the environment. Do not eat in front of the television. Eat only at the dining table. This separation helps weaken the old association. The same idea can be used to create new habits. For example, if you want to start doing push-ups, pick a place in your home that is always linked to that habit. Each time you enter that space, you will be reminded automatically. James also warns about mixing too many habits in the same environment. If your bed is for sleeping, do not use it for work. If your desk is for working, do not use it for watching movies. Give each space a clear purpose so your brain learns to connect the right habit with the right location. The lesson is clear. You do not rise to the level of your motivation. You fall to the level of your environment. If you design your surroundings to make good choices easier, you will not need to force yourself with willpower. The environment will do most of the work for you. Now that James has shown us how powerful the environment is, another question arises. If environment is so important, then how do we deal with temptations that surround us? How do we resist the bad cues that are always trying to pull us back? This takes us into the next part. Chapter 7. The Secret to Self-Control. Here, James will explain why avoiding temptation is often better than fighting it, and how real self-control begins with removing triggers from our lives. Chapter 7. The Secret to Self-Control. For centuries, people have praised self-control as the ultimate strength. We admire those who can resist temptation. We believe that the key to success is willpower. But James Clear gives us a surprising truth. The people with the best self-control are not those who fight temptation every day. They are the ones who avoid it in the first place. Research shows that when you are constantly exposed to cues of bad habits, your willpower gets weaker. No one has endless strength to say no. Imagine trying to quit smoking while keeping cigarettes in your pocket, or trying to eat healthy with ice cream in the freezer. It becomes a battle you eventually lose. The real secret is not to fight temptations, but to remove them. Instead of proving how strong you are, design your environment so you do not need to prove anything. If you want to waste less time online, uninstall the distracting apps. If you want to eat better, do not buy junk food at all. If you want to save money, unsubscribe from shopping emails. James also explains that self-control works like a muscle. It gets tired when overused. This is why people make poor choices after a long day. Their mental energy is low, so instead of relying on endless discipline, build a lifestyle where good habits are the default option. For example, if your home is filled only with healthy food, you do not need to resist junk food. It simply is not there. Another powerful point James makes is that people with strong self-control usually spend less time in tempting situations. They are not superheroes. They are just smart designers of their environment. They remove cues that trigger bad habits and increase cues that support good ones. This lesson connects directly to the first law of behavior change. Make it obvious. But here, the opposite also matters. Make bad habits invisible. Out of sight, out of mind. The less you see a temptation, the less you feel its pull. James gives a final reminder. Self-control is a short-term strategy. Resisting once or twice is fine, but long-term success comes from avoiding temptation altogether. In the end, the best way to exercise self-control is not needing it at all. With this, we finish the first law of behavior change. Make it obvious. We have learned how habits start with cues, how environment shapes behavior, and why removing temptations is more effective than fighting them. Now we move to the second law. Make it attractive. In the next chapter, James will show how to make good habits so appealing that we naturally want to do them, and how to use the power of desire to our advantage. Chapter 8. How to make a habit irresistible. Why do we repeat certain behaviors again and again? Because they feel rewarding. Our brain is designed to seek pleasure and avoid pain. This is why some habits stick easily, while others feel like a struggle. The trick is not to rely only on discipline. It is to make good habits more attractive. James Clear introduces a powerful idea called temptation bundling. This means you pair something you want to do with something you need to do. For example, if you love watching your favorite show, you allow yourself to watch it only while exercising on a treadmill. If you enjoy drinking coffee, you do it only after practicing your new skill. This way, your brain begins to link pleasure with the good habit. Another method is called habit stacking with attraction. We already learned habit stacking earlier, which means attaching a new habit to an existing one. Now we add pleasure to it. Imagine you want to learn a language. You can practice vocabulary while drinking your favorite tea. Or listen to lessons during a walk you already enjoy. This creates a natural pull toward the habit. Our desires are also influenced by dopamine. Dopamine is a chemical in the brain that motivates us to take action. It rises not just when we get a reward, but also when we expect it. This is why anticipation is powerful. If you can create excitement before a habit, it becomes easier to do. For example, putting on special workout clothes you like can make you look forward to exercise. James explains that culture also plays a huge role. When people around us value a behavior, it looks more attractive. If everyone in your group is reading books, you want to read too. If your friends love fitness, you feel encouraged to join. This is why joining the right community can transform your habits. We copy what is rewarded in our social circle. So the key message of this chapter is clear. Make your good habits irresistible. Use temptation bundling. Add fun to the process. Surround yourself with people who value the habits you want. When you change desire, discipline becomes less necessary. We have seen how to make habits attractive by linking them with pleasure and positive social influence. But not all habits are good. Some are harmful, and we need to break them. So in the next chapter, James will explain how family, friends, and social environment shape not only our good habits, but also our bad ones. He will show us how to identify the real causes of unhealthy patterns and how to start replacing them. Chapter 9. The role of family and friends in shaping your habits. Humans are social creatures. We are deeply influenced by the people around us. Whether we realize it or not, we copy behaviors, beliefs, and values from our family, friends, and community. This social influence plays a huge role in building or breaking habits. James Clear explains that we naturally imitate three main groups. The close group, which is family and friends. The many group, which is the tribe or the crowd. The powerful group, which is people we admire or respect. First, let us look at family and friends. When you grow up in a household where reading is valued, you are more likely to read. If your family exercises often, you see it as normal. On the other hand, if unhealthy eating is common at home, it becomes part of your lifestyle without much thought. The environment created by family habits shapes our default behaviors. Next comes the tribe. Humans have a strong need to belong. If everyone in your social group enjoys hiking, you feel motivated to join. If your coworkers often eat junk food during breaks, you are tempted to do the same. Belonging can pull us in positive or negative directions. We follow the habits that help us fit in. The third group is the powerful. These are leaders, celebrities, teachers, or people we admire. When they promote a certain habit, it feels attractive to us. If your role model talks about meditation, you want to try it. If your mentor encourages daily planning, you feel inspired to copy it. Respect and admiration make habits spread faster. The important lesson is this. We do not just build habits alone. We adopt the habits of the people around us. That means if you want to change your habits, Change your environment of relationships. Spend more time with people who already live the way you want to live. Join groups where your desired behavior is the normal behavior. If you want to run, join a runner's club. If you want to write, join a community of writers. The more you surround yourself with such people, the easier it becomes to stick with the right habits. At the same time, be careful of negative influence. If you constantly spend time with people who complain, you will complain more. If you stay close to people who waste time, you will waste time too. Habits are contagious. Choose carefully which ones you want to catch. The truth is, approval and acceptance are some of the strongest rewards in life. When good habits are praised by the people we love or respect, they become even more satisfying. This is why family and friends are not just company. They are powerful shapers of destiny. Now that we understand how social influence works, the question becomes, what about our bad habits? Why do they form, and how can we fix them? In the next chapter, James Clear will guide us into identifying the hidden causes of bad habits and how to replace them with better ones. This will help us not only avoid traps, but also design a healthier future. Chapter 10: How to Find and Fix the Causes of Your Bad Habits. Every bad habit has a reason. It is not random. It usually solves some problem for us, even if only for a short time. For example, smoking reduces stress for a moment. Overeating gives comfort when we feel sad. Checking the phone again and again removes boredom. So bad habits are often our way of coping with challenges. James Clear explains that the key to breaking bad habits is not only willpower. It is about understanding the root cause. If you remove the cause, the habit becomes easier to change. Let us look at some common causes. One cause is stress. When we feel pressure, we look for quick relief. That is why many people turn to unhealthy food, alcohol, or scrolling endlessly on the internet. Instead of fighting the habit directly, it is better to learn healthier ways to deal with stress. Meditation, walking, or talking to a friend can solve the same problem without harm. Another cause is boredom. The mind likes stimulation. When nothing is happening, we grab our phone, eat snacks, or waste time. The solution is to keep positive activities ready. Read a book, write in a journal, or play a meaningful game. By replacing the action, boredom loses its control. Another cause is environment. If cookies are always on the kitchen table, you will eat them more often. If cigarettes are in your pocket, you will smoke more. The environment silently pushes us. To fix a bad habit, remove the cues. Do not keep temptations in easy reach. Make the bad habit invisible. Another important cause is belief. Sometimes we tell ourselves stories like, "I am just lazy," or "I cannot quit." These beliefs trap us in a loop. But habits are not permanent identity. They are repeated actions. Changing the story we tell ourselves helps us escape. Instead of saying "I am lazy," say "I am learning to be disciplined." This small shift makes a big difference. James Clear also suggests using a technique called reprogramming. When you catch yourself about to act on a bad habit, pause and ask, "What need am I trying to satisfy?" Then look for a better way to meet that need. If you want relaxation, take a walk instead of smoking. If you want excitement, play a sport instead of gambling. This turns the energy of the habit into something positive. The real secret is not to hate yourself for bad habits. They are simply solutions that no longer serve you. By finding the cause and replacing it with a better solution, you design a healthier path. This is the art of fixing habits at the root level. Now that we know how to uncover and fix the causes of bad habits, the next step is to make good habits easier to build. In the coming chapter, James Clear will show why starting small and moving steadily forward is the key to lasting success. It is not about giant steps, but about consistent progress. Chapter 11: Walk slowly, but never backward. James Clear reminds us that building good habits is not about speed. It is about direction. You do not need to move fast. You just need to keep moving forward. Many people give up on their goals because progress feels too slow. They expect quick results. When they do not see change in a few days, they lose motivation. But habits do not work like that. Habits grow quietly and invisibly before they show visible results. Think about a bamboo tree. For years it grows underground, building roots. Nothing seems to happen on the surface. Then one day, it shoots up rapidly. Good habits are the same. They may feel small at first, but they prepare you for big growth later. James Clear explains that small habits are like compound interest. Just as money grows by small percentages over time, habits grow by small actions repeated daily. If you improve only 1% each day, you become much better in a year. This is why consistency is more important than intensity. Sometimes we fail or miss a day. That is normal. But the rule is simple. Never miss twice. If you skip one workout, make sure you do the next one. If you eat junk food today, eat healthy tomorrow. One mistake will not destroy you. Repeated mistakes create the problem. The lesson is clear. Walk slowly, but never backward. Small steps in the right direction are powerful. They may look weak at the moment, but over time, they transform your life. This chapter teaches patience. True change is not about sudden breakthroughs. It is about steady progress. As long as you are moving forward, even if slowly, you are winning. Now that we understand the power of steady progress, the next step is to learn how to make actions easier. In the next chapter, James Clear will explain why humans always choose the path of least effort and how we can use this law to design better habits. Chapter 12. The Law of Least Effort. James Clear begins this chapter with a simple truth. Human beings are naturally lazy in some ways. We are wired to choose the option that requires the least energy. If there are two paths, we usually take the easier one. This tendency is not always bad. It is part of our survival system. Our brains and bodies are designed to conserve energy. But when it comes to building good habits, this instinct can either help us or hurt us. If you want to develop better habits, you need to make them as easy as possible. If a habit feels effortless, you are more likely to repeat it. On the other hand, if a habit requires too much friction, you will probably avoid it. James introduces the idea of reducing friction for good habits and increasing friction for bad habits. For example, if you want to play guitar more often, keep it in the middle of your living room instead of locked in a case under the bed. By reducing the number of steps between you and the action, you make it easier to practice. If you want to read more, place books in every room so one is always within reach. If you want to exercise, set out your workout clothes the night before. The opposite also works when you want to break a bad habit. If you want to watch less television, unplug it after every use and put the remote in another room. The extra effort creates friction, which makes the habit less automatic. If you want to spend less time on your phone, leave it in another part of the house while working. Even small barriers like these reduce the chances of repeating the bad habit. James calls this principle the law of least effort. We follow the path that demands the least resistance. So the goal is to design your environment so that good habits are the natural and easy choice, while bad habits are difficult to continue. He gives another clear example from technology. Think about why people order food online. It is not always cheaper or healthier, but it is easier. With only a few clicks, the meal arrives at your door. Convenience often wins over quality. So if you want your good habits to compete, you must make them just as convenient, if not more. James also highlights that small design changes can reshape entire lifestyles. If healthy snacks are the first thing you see in the kitchen, you are more likely to eat them. If your workspace is clean and organized, you will feel more ready to work. If your gym is on the way home from work, you will visit it more often. The structure of your environment silently guides your behavior. The lesson is simple but powerful. Do not rely only on willpower. Make good habits easy and bad habits hard. By respecting the law of least effort, you build a life where progress flows naturally, instead of feeling like a daily struggle. Now that we understand why making habits easy is crucial, James takes the idea one step further. Even if a habit is easy, we often delay starting. We procrastinate and tell ourselves we will do it later. So how do we overcome that problem? This question leads us into the next part. Chapter 13. How to stop procrastinating by using the 2-minute rule. Here, James will explain how breaking habits down into tiny, 2-minute actions can help us get started and stay consistent. Chapter 13. How to stop procrastinating by using the 2-minute rule. Procrastination is one of the biggest enemies of building good habits. We all have experienced it. We know what we should do, but we keep delaying it. We tell ourselves, I will start tomorrow, or after this week, or when I feel ready. But tomorrow rarely comes. James Clear explains that the secret to overcoming procrastination is not about doing everything at once. It is about simply getting started. To make this easier, he introduces the 2-minute rule. The rule says this: when you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. For example, instead of saying, I will read every night, say, I will read 1 page. Instead of saying, I will run 5 kilometers, say, I will put on my running shoes. Instead of saying, I will meditate for 20 minutes, say, I will sit quietly for 2 minutes. Why does this work? Because once you start, momentum builds naturally. Putting on your shoes often leads to stepping outside. Reading 1 page often turns into reading for 10 minutes. Writing 1 sentence often grows into writing a full page. Starting small removes the mental barrier that stops you from beginning at all. James explains that many people struggle not with habits themselves, but with the act of starting. The hardest part of going to the gym is not the workout. It is tying your shoelaces and stepping out the door. The hardest part of writing is not finishing the book. It is sitting at the desk and opening the notebook. The 2-minute rule breaks this resistance by making the entry point tiny and easy. He warns, however, that the rule is not about tricking yourself into only doing 2 minutes forever. It is about building the identity of someone who shows up. You may read only 1 page today, but by repeating this act, you prove to yourself, I am a reader. You may do only a short stretch today, but over time, you prove to yourself, I am active and healthy. Small beginnings become evidence of the identity you want to build. James also highlights a helpful distinction. There is a difference between motion and action. Motion feels like progress, but does not produce results. For example, researching about exercise plans is motion. Actually doing push-ups is action. Planning an article is motion. Writing the article is action. The 2-minute rule forces you into action by lowering the entry point. The main lesson is this: do not focus on doing a perfect workout or writing a perfect page. Focus on showing up and starting. Master the art of beginning. Once you are in motion, improvement will follow. Now that James has shown how the 2-minute rule helps us begin habits, the next challenge is how to make sure those habits continue automatically. How do we design our environment and systems so that good habits become inevitable and bad habits become impossible? This leads directly into the next part. Chapter 14. How to make good habits, inevitable and bad habits impossible. Here James will explain how to lock in good behaviors using smart choices and technology so that success happens by default. Chapter 14. How to make good habits, inevitable and bad habits impossible. James Clear begins this chapter with the idea of commitment devices. A commitment device is a choice you make today that locks in your future behavior. It is a way of reducing the chance of going back on your word. For example, if you sign up and pay for a gym membership in advance, you are more likely to attend because the money is already invested. If you set up automatic savings that transfer money from your account every month, you save without having to think about it. By making the decision once, you make the desired habit automatic and inevitable. James explains that one of the most powerful tools we have today is technology. We can use it to build systems that make good habits easy and bad habits impossible. For example, use an app that blocks distracting websites during your working hours. This prevents you from wasting time online. Or program your thermostat to lower at night so that you naturally prepare for sleep. Small design choices like these lock in behaviors without relying on willpower. Another example is food. If you want to eat healthier, buy smaller plates. This reduces portion size automatically. If you do not want to eat junk food, do not bring it into your house. When it is not available, the bad habit becomes impossible to follow. James also gives the example of Victor Hugo, the famous French writer. When he had to finish a book but kept procrastinating, he came up with a commitment device. He asked his servant to lock away all his clothes except for a large shawl. Since he had nothing proper to wear outside, he stayed home and wrote for months until the book was finished. This shows how clever strategies can make certain habits unavoidable. The key lesson here is this. If you want to stick with good habits, design your environment and systems so that success is the default choice. If you want to break bad habits, increase barriers until they become too much trouble. Do not rely only on discipline or motivation. Instead, build conditions where the right action is the easiest action. James calls this making good habits inevitable and bad habits impossible. The more you shape your environment to support your goals, the less you need to struggle against temptation. Now that James has explained how to make habits automatic and locked in, he turns to the next part of the framework. So far we have seen how to make habits obvious, attractive, and easy, but there is still one final piece missing. For a habit to last, it must feel rewarding in the moment. This leads us into the fourth law of behavior change. Chapter 15, the Cardinal Rule of Behavior Change. Here, James explains why making habits satisfying is the secret to keeping them alive for the long term. Chapter 15, the Cardinal Rule of Behavior Change. James Clear begins this chapter by reminding us that human behavior is strongly guided by rewards. If a habit feels satisfying, we repeat it. If it feels unpleasant, we avoid it. This is called the Cardinal Rule of Behavior Change. The brain is wired to seek immediate satisfaction. That is why habits that give instant pleasure, like eating junk food or scrolling social media, are easy to form. They reward us right away. But habits that are good for us in the long run, like exercising or saving money, often feel uncomfortable in the short term. This creates a mismatch between what our brain wants now and what our goals demand later. James gives the example of brushing teeth. When toothpaste companies first introduced their product, people were not motivated to use it for health reasons. The real breakthrough came when they added mint flavor and foam. This gave an immediate, fresh and clean feeling. That sensation was satisfying, and so brushing became a daily habit. The lesson is clear. To build good habits, we must find ways to add instant rewards. He explains that the brain values what is rewarded and forgets what is punished. If a good habit feels satisfying today, you will continue it tomorrow. If a bad habit feels painful today, you will think twice before repeating it. This is why James emphasizes immediate feedback. For example, if you are trying to save money, you can track your progress with a visible chart or app that shows your growing savings. That visual signal feels rewarding. If you want to exercise regularly, give yourself a small treat like watching your favorite show only after finishing a workout. This turns the workout into a gateway to something pleasant. At the same time, to break a bad habit, add a little pain or cost. For instance, if you want to stop smoking, commit to donating money to a cause you dislike every time you smoke. This makes the habit unsatisfying and helps you resist it. The deeper lesson is this. We repeat habits that feel good in the present, not just those that are good for the future. So if you want lasting change, you must design your habits so they bring you joy, pride, or satisfaction immediately. James also points out that satisfaction can come from progress. Tracking habits with a habit journal or a calendar gives you the pleasure of seeing your streak grow. Each small win reinforces your identity as someone who is improving. This emotional reward keeps you on track. Finally, James summarizes this law by saying, "What is rewarded is repeated. What is punished is avoided." Therefore, the secret to long-lasting habits is to make them satisfying in the short term, as well as valuable in the long term. Now that James has introduced the importance of satisfaction, he moves to the next practical step. It is not enough to know that satisfaction is important. We must also learn how to feel this satisfaction every single day, so that our good habits become part of our lifestyle. This leads us into Chapter 16, How to Stick with Good Habits Every Day. Here, James will show how consistency is built and how small daily rewards make all the difference. Chapter 16, How to Stick with Good Habits. every day. James Clear opens this chapter with a simple truth. Good habits do not depend on big effort once in a while. They depend on small actions repeated every day. The challenge is not starting a habit. The challenge is sticking to it. One of the most powerful tools for this is habit tracking. Habit tracking means recording each time you perform a habit. This can be done with a notebook, a calendar, or a digital app. When you mark an X on the calendar or tick a box in your journal, you get a small sense of reward. This small act becomes proof that you are staying consistent. It also shows visible progress, which motivates you to continue. James shares the story of comedian Jerry Seinfeld. He wanted to improve his joke writing skills, so he used a calendar system called Don't Break the Chain. Every day he wrote jokes, he marked an X on the calendar. After a few days, he had a chain of X's. His only goal was to never break the chain. The focus shifted from writing the best jokes to simply writing daily. That is how consistency is built. Habit tracking also gives an immediate sense of satisfaction. It acts as a reward. Each mark on your tracker says, "I am the kind of person who does this." This reinforces your identity. Over time, you start to see yourself as someone who exercises, someone who saves money, someone who reads daily. The tracking tool makes the invisible progress visible. Another benefit of tracking is awareness. Often, people fail to notice when they skip a habit. By tracking, you can clearly see when you miss a day. This prevents small lapses from becoming long breaks. James advises never to miss a habit twice in a row. Missing once is normal and forgivable. Missing twice starts a new negative pattern. So, the rule is simple. Get back on track quickly. James also warns not to confuse tracking with the habit itself. Tracking is a tool, not the goal. The real aim is to perform the habit. If you spend more time designing trackers than doing the work, you are missing the point. Keep it simple. A quick mark on a calendar is often enough. To make habit tracking enjoyable, pair it with other small rewards. For example, after completing a workout, tick the box and smile at your progress. After saving money, update your savings chart and take pride in the growing number. The positive feeling ensures you want to repeat the action. Habit tracking works because it combines three powerful forces. It makes habits obvious by giving you a visual reminder. It makes them attractive by giving you the joy of progress. And it makes them satisfying by providing an immediate sense of achievement. James concludes this chapter by reminding us, consistency is the key to success. Small daily actions create long-term transformation. And habit tracking is one of the simplest ways to stick with good habits every single day. Now that James has explained how to make habits stick through daily tracking, he takes the idea one step further. Sometimes sticking to habits is easier when we are not alone. Having someone to encourage us, guide us, and keep us accountable can change everything. This prepares us for Chapter 17, How an Accountability Partner Can Change Everything. Here, James shows how social pressure and support can push us to stay committed even when our motivation fades. Chapter 17, How an Accountability Partner Can Change Everything. James Clear begins this chapter with a simple observation. People care about how they appear in front of others. We all want to be respected. We all want to be seen as reliable. This human need for approval can be used as a powerful tool to stick with good habits. An accountability partner is someone who keeps you responsible for your actions. It can be a friend, a coach, a mentor, or even a group of like-minded people. When you know someone is watching your progress, you feel more pressure to stay consistent. Breaking a promise to yourself feels bad, but breaking a promise in front of others feels even worse. James explains the idea of the accountability contract. This is when you create a written agreement about the habit you want to build. You define what you will do, how often you will do it, and what happens if you fail. Then you sign it, and so does your accountability partner. This makes the habit serious, almost like a business contract. One strong example comes from professional athletes. Many athletes hire coaches, not just for training, but for accountability. The coach makes sure they show up every day. The athlete knows if they skip, the coach will notice. This outside pressure helps them stay committed, even on days they do not feel motivated. Another example James shares is of a man who wanted to quit smoking. He made a contract that if he smoked again, he would give money to a cause he hated. His friends were the witnesses. The fear of losing money and facing shame made it almost impossible for him to smoke again. This shows the power of combining accountability with consequences. The beauty of accountability is that it brings the invisible into the open. When you act alone, nobody knows if you succeed or fail. But when you involve someone else, every action counts. This social expectation pushes you to be consistent. James also explains that accountability works both ways. You can encourage your partner, and they can encourage you. This creates mutual support. Together, you both grow stronger in your habits. However, James warns that accountability only works if you choose the right person. The partner must be someone you respect. If you do not value their opinion, their presence will not matter. So select someone whose respect you do not want to lose. By the end of this chapter, James leaves us with a key idea. We may forget promises we make to ourselves, but we rarely forget promises made to others. That is why accountability can turn fragile habits into lasting behavior. At this point, James has shown us how habits can become stronger with tracking and accountability. But building habits is not just about effort. It is also about using our natural strengths and working smartly. This takes us into the advanced tactics. In the next chapter, James discusses the truth about talent. Here he explains how our genetics and natural gifts play a role in shaping which habits will give us the greatest success. Chapter 18. The Truth About Talent. James Clear begins this chapter by asking a big question. Why do some people seem naturally better at certain things than others? The answer lies in our genes. Genes create the foundation of our abilities, but they do not decide everything. He explains that talent is real. Some people are born with faster reflexes, some with stronger bodies, some with sharper memory. But talent only shows its power when combined with the right habits. James gives an example from sports. Usain Bolt, the world-famous sprinter, has a natural body structure perfect for running. But if he had trained for swimming instead, he may not have become world-class. This shows that natural talent must match the field of effort. He calls this idea choosing the right field of competition. If you work in an area where your natural strengths fit well, habits become easier and more enjoyable. When talent and practice come together, success grows faster. James also explains that environment can highlight or hide talent. For example, a tall person may succeed in basketball if they live in a place where basketball is popular. But if they live in a village with no basketball courts, their height may not bring any advantage. This means environment shapes how talent is used. He introduces the concept of genes load the gun, habits pull the trigger. In other words, your DNA gives you potential, but your daily habits decide whether that potential turns into achievement. One useful lesson James shares is to find the type of work that feels natural to you. When the work matches your personality and skills, it does not feel like a heavy struggle. You enjoy the process. And when you enjoy the process, you keep repeating it. Repetition builds mastery. He also explains that sometimes people waste energy by fighting their weaknesses. Instead, it is smarter to build habits around your strengths. If you are good at writing, focus on writing more often. If you are good at teaching, build a habit around teaching. This makes growth faster and more satisfying. James reminds us that success is not only about talent, it is about persistence and the ability to stay consistent with habits. Talent can give you an early advantage, but habits decide the long-term game. By the end of this chapter, James gives a practical lesson. Do not worry about talents you do not have. Instead, discover the talents you do have and design habits around them. That is how you build a life where effort feels lighter and results become greater. After learning about the role of talent and genetics, James prepares us for another important idea. Even when you choose the right field and build on your strengths, you may face boredom or lack of motivation. So how do you stay consistent? This leads to the next chapter, the Goldilocks rule. How to Stay Motivated in Life and Work. Chapter 19. The Goldilocks Rule. James Clear starts this chapter with a simple truth. Staying motivated is not always easy. Many people quit their good habits after some time. The question is, how can we continue when things feel boring or difficult? He introduces the idea of the Goldilocks Rule. This rule says that people experience the highest level of motivation when they work on a task that is not too easy and not too hard. It should be just right. When a task is too easy, we get bored. When a task is too hard, we get discouraged. But when the task is in the middle, we feel challenged and excited to keep going. James gives examples from sports and learning. A tennis player will enjoy the game most when playing against someone of equal skill. If the opponent is too weak, the game feels boring. If the opponent is too strong, the player feels hopeless. But when the opponent is slightly better or equal, the player grows and enjoys the game. This rule also applies to building habits. If you want to read more books, start with books that are simple and interesting. Do not begin with something extremely difficult that will make you frustrated. At the same time, do not keep reading books below your level. Push yourself just a little beyond your comfort zone. James explains that mastery requires balancing boredom and challenge. Even professionals face boredom. Top athletes, musicians, and writers do the same practice again and again. What keeps them going is the ability to love the process even when it feels repetitive. He points out that the difference between professionals and amateurs is this. Amateurs stop when it gets boring. Professionals keep going despite the boredom. Consistency, not excitement, is the real key to long-term success. James shares practical advice to stay motivated. One method is to measure your progress. When you see small improvements, you feel motivated to continue. Another method is to have a clear purpose. If you know why you are doing something, you are more likely to stick with it. The Goldilocks Rule reminds us that the path to success is not about constant fun. It is about staying steady when the excitement fades. If you can continue working in the zone that is just right for you, progress will keep building. Now that James has explained how to stay motivated, he also warns us about a hidden risk. Sometimes, good habits themselves can bring problems if we rely on them too much. This leads to the next chapter, the downside of creating good habits. Chapter 20. The downside of creating good habits. James Clear begins by reminding us of all the benefits of habits. Habits save energy. They help us act automatically. They make life smoother and more productive. But like every powerful tool, habits also have a hidden cost. The first downside is automatic living. When something becomes a habit, we stop paying attention to it. This can make us blind to mistakes. For example, if a worker has done the same job for many years, he may stop noticing better ways to improve. He may become stuck in old routines. The second downside is overconfidence. When we master a habit, we sometimes believe we do not need to learn anymore. This is dangerous because the world changes. If we do not adapt, our good habits may slowly become outdated. James gives an example from athletes and professionals. A player who always uses the same technique might win for a while. But as competition evolves, the same habit may stop working. In business, a company may succeed by following one formula. But if the market shifts, those old habits may cause failure. He explains that the key is reflection and review. Habits should not run forever without checking them. You need time to ask yourself, is this habit still serving me? Is this the best way, or should I adjust? James introduces a tool called the annual review. Once a year, he looks back at his habits, goals, and systems. He checks what worked and what did not. This practice keeps his habits fresh and useful. Another tool is the integrity report. This is a mid-year reflection where he asks himself 3 questions. What are the values I am living by? Am I being true to those values? Where can I improve? These reports keep him aware and stop his habits from turning into blind routines. James reminds us that habits are a double-edged sword. They can help us grow, but if left unchecked, they can limit us. The solution is to stay flexible and self-aware. He closes the chapter by saying that habits are the foundation, not the ceiling. They should support you, not trap you. By balancing automatic behavior with reflection, you can enjoy the power of habits without falling into their downside. Now that we understand both the power and the danger of habits, James prepares us for the final part of the book. The conclusion brings together all the lessons and reveals the real secret to lasting results. This is where we learn the secret to results that last. Conclusion: the secret to results that last. James Clear ends the book with a powerful reminder. Big success does not come from one giant change. It comes from many small habits built day after day. He says that the true magic of habits is compound growth. Just like money grows with interest, small habits grow with time. If you improve 1% each day, the effect becomes massive over years. This is why focusing on systems is better than chasing goals. Goals are about results. Systems are about processes. When you fall in love with the process, the results come naturally. If you keep building better systems, progress never stops. James explains that the secret to results that last is identity change. When habits are only about results, they may fade. But when habits are connected to your identity, they stay strong. For example, instead of saying I want to run, say I am a runner. Instead of saying I want to write, say I am a writer. Identity-based habits shape who you are and create lasting change. He also reminds us that perfection is not the goal. No one follows good habits perfectly. The aim is consistency, not perfection. Missing once does not break a habit. Getting back on track quickly is the real strength. James says, do not focus on doing more and more. Focus on mastering the simple habits that matter most. Build a system where good habits are easy and satisfying. Remove friction for positive behavior and add friction for negative behavior. In the end, Atomic Habits is about building a lifestyle. A lifestyle where small improvements are natural, where growth is continuous, where your identity and actions match. This is how success lasts for a lifetime. James leaves us with hope. You already have the power to change. You do not need big motivation or radical action. You just need to start small and stay consistent. Tiny habits, big results, big.